With Ace Attorney Month coming to a close, I wanted to end with a bang. I've already talked about the most important reasons Ace Attorney is an amazing series, from the unforgettable characters to the amazing soundtrack. But easily, the most memorable parts of these games are the cases. With only 4 or 5 cases appearing in each game, each episode has so much thought put into every single detail. Even some of the most hated cases in the series have some redeeming factors. Every case is so memorable, whether it be the characters, the situation that happens, or the eventual turnabout that flips the entire situation on its head. And I am here to count down my favorites. I am taking everything into account: the idea, the execution, the puzzles, the prosecutor, the contribution to the overall plot, and anything else. The only rule I'm bringing into this countdown is that I'm going to include at least one case from every single game in the series, including Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright. Also, this should be pretty obvious, but huge spoilers for literally every single game in the series, no matter how small the spoiler. With that out of the way, let's get started. I have to say, overall, Investigations has my least favorite cases in the series. I mean, the first 2 cases are alright, but the Kidnap Turnabout has some really stupid puzzles, and Turnabout Ablaze is way too boring for way too long. So I guess I'll go with Turnabout Reminiscence. Turnabout Reminiscence is another flashback case in the series, but the simple change of putting you into Edgeworth's perspective is what makes this case so impactful. This case goes back to Edgeworth's first case, where the defendant Mac Reel and prosecutor Byrne Faraday seem to have killed each other in the defendant's lobby. However, after some careful analysis, there was someone who killed them both, and the blame is pinned on Gumshoe. This is a great origin story for Edgeworth. We did get to see young Edgeworth in cases like Turnabout Beginnings, but we get to see Edgeworth's motives and why he thinks Von Karma's way is correct. And even though the case does kind of go against Edgeworth's morals at the time, they do it pretty well, with it basically being a race against a 13-year-old Francisca. And this case has a lot of foreshadowing for other cases, from Gumshoe's loyalty to Edgeworth to how Gumshoe got his nickname Scruffy. And this isn't even mentioning the amount of stuff this thing sets up for Turnabout Ablaze. It starts the Yatagarasu mystery and how Kay connects to all of it. The true criminal ends up being Castillo Yu, the defense attorney of the case. She pulls a gun in court and escapes, admitting she's the great thief, the Yatagarasu. Oh, and Detective Bad. Oh, Detective Bad. We get to see him in full action in this case, which I love so much. It sets up for Turnabout Ablaze, making his character arc so much more surprising. There's so much more I can say about this case, but overall, it fixes my problems with the first Investigations game. It puts story with just as much importance as gameplay, something that isn't always true in this game. Oh, you want more? You gotta cross-examine the judge. Done. I already said I don't hate Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright, but it is the weakest entry for both franchises. As a crossover, it is actually really good, but as an Ace Attorney game, it's severely lacking. That doesn't mean it doesn't have its moments. The Golden Court is pretty awesome. The Golden Court is extremely surprising and is easily my favorite part of this game. The case starts off with Layton being turned into gold, and Maya keeping her 1 murder accusation per game record. And with the danger of death being even more prevalent, the trial matters a huge amount. And along with all of that, the room where Layton was turned into gold had a murdered Newton inside of it. The emotion throughout this whole case shines more than anything else. For example, Luke goes up to the stand because he cares so much about the professor. And there is a lot of emotion that comes near the end of the case. We'll come back to that last one. And since this is the second witch trial, the game can no longer change the rules on you like they can with the first and last one. And the entire magic aspect is used tremendously in this case, introducing portals and questioning if the stones are even real. But to be honest, the ending of this case is my favorite moment in the entire game. Jean Gretel admits to being a witch. She ended up strangling Belduke through the portal because she was afraid he would reveal her as a witch. However, the letter he was writing was actually a suicide note, mentioning how bad he feels for leaving Jean. And Phoenix reading it out loud in court is one of the most sad and depressing moments in the series. Despite the murder being a suicide, Jean still has to be dropped into the fire, but Espella intervenes. She claims she is the Great Witch and jumps into the cage instead. But Maya attempts a daring rescue to save Espella, but it fails and Maya falls into the fire instead. This case is extremely heartbreaking and intense. It captures the most emotion in the entire game, it has some of my favorite witnesses in the game, and the puzzles are pretty creative. Too bad the next chapter basically makes this case pointless and worthless!
This is why we can't have nice things!
I had a really hard time choosing a case from Dual Destinies. They are all really good, and any one of them could have made this list. Ultimately, I was flip-flopping between this case and Turnabout for Tomorrow, but Turnabout Academy just came over the top. I will agree with most people that Turnabout Academy is the best case of Dual Destinies. The case starts off with the office going to a mock trial with Athena's old friend, Juniper Woods. However, after a teacher is killed the same way as the mock trial, Junie is arrested and Athena defends her. You get to play as Athena in this case, so we're already off to a great start. We go into the first trial, but there's something that's not right. Juniper's classmates Robin Newman and Hugh O'Connor are both suspicious, and both even admit to being the killer. And even Juniper jumps in to cover for both of them. So the killer seems to be a three-way coin toss between them. And this is why Turnabout Academy breaks trends. The friendship between all three of these characters is so endearing and heartwarming. They all hide their own secrets, whether it be their age or even their freaking gender, but they still love each other like family. And the addition of the friendship bracelets help tie this all together. And I think another underrated aspect of this case is how it feels like a mock trial. The culprit can really go any way depending on how you view the case. It can be Juniper, because she has a motive against the victim and can move the body. It could be Robin, because she's a girl and was poking around where she shouldn't have been. It could be Hugh, because he can use the construction equipment and had blood on his hands. You never really know who it is. Even when you zero in on Hugh, the happiness that he feels from getting a guilty verdict draws more into question. And then the real killer is revealed. Aristotle Means ends up being the true culprit, and the final puzzle of figuring out how he hid the body under a cloth which made her look like the Phoenix Wright bust is incredible. This is maybe the only problem I have with this case. Aristotle comes out of nowhere to be the villain, and he doesn't really have a motive, and it feels more like an afterthought in the end. I don't think I can complain too much. The ends don't justify the means. Ugh, it seems I can't go one countdown this month without going against popular opinions. Turnabout Serenade. Okay, hear me out on here, fans, please. All the complaints I've heard about this case are true. The villain is predictable, the way Machi is accused is ridiculous, and the 3D video is extremely tedious. But you know what? I don't care. I love this case, and along with Turnabout Trump, this is the only case I love in Apollo Justice. This case concept is still my favorite in the series. During a concert, their guest singer's manager, Lataus, is shot, and after his body disappears and reappears on the stage, there's something weird going on. And if that wasn't enough, the murder lines up perfectly to the lyrics of the Guitar Serenade, a song during the concert. Great idea, interesting concept. What's next? Gameplay-wise, this is the greatest case in the entire series. The puzzles are really creative, like having to isolate Lamiar's singing part to hear the gunshot, and easily my favorite part, using the perceivability on both Machi and Lamiar at the same time. It is brilliantly done, and the plot twists are some of the most insane in the series. And I really like the characters in this case. Lamiar and Machi's relationship feels real, and the mystery behind who she is intriguing. We also get introduced to Valiant Grammaire, and his chemistry with Trucy is fantastic. Yeah, he is a bit selfish for hiding his magic trick even though there's murder involved, but I still love him. And Darrow Creshed is a predictable villain, but his movements and sprites just make me smile. Oh, and his breakdown is one of my favorite in the series. Yes, there are problems with this case that I understand, but this case surprised me so much my first time around, I can't help but love it. There's no more controversial picks on this list. Trust me, okay? Well, it seems I can't even keep my promise for one entry. Bridge to the Turnabout. Okay, I don't hate this, guys, I don't. I wouldn't have put this on the list otherwise, but I like the next 5 cases more. So let's talk about why Bridge to the Turnabout is so great. The case starts with the gang going to Eagle Mountain to get some spirit training, and one of the spirits looks an awful lot like Dahlia Hawthorne. But of course, someone gets murdered, and Phoenix attempts to cross a burning bridge that was struck by lightning, and he falls through the bridge and almost dies. But never fear. Edgeworth comes to take over the defense, and Francisca as the prosecutor. Add in Larry, Godot, and Phoenix returning for the case, and you pretty much have every main character of the trilogy. And let's talk about that. This case is the culmination of the entire Ace Attorney trilogy, and it is wonderful. It already has all the characters I've mentioned, but there's also some other returning faces. Like, how about, I don't know, Misty Faye, Maya's mother who disappeared after DL6? Not to mention, this case has a lot to do with Mia, and especially Godot. I've already talked about how much I love Godot, but this case fleshes out his entire backstory, and cornering him at the end of the case is one of the best moments in the entire series. And Bridge to the Turnabout also uses spirit mediums in its crime. Yeah, we had Reunion in Turnabout, but an important part of this case is who is being channeled. Maya channeling Dahlia to look like Iris is brilliant. And there are so many more moments I can talk about. This aspect makes the investigation segments a part of the crime, rather than a huge expositional dump like some other cases, which is why it's incredible. In short, this case perfectly wraps up both Trials and Tribulations and the trilogy as a whole. It's awesome, it's creative, and it's one of the best final cases in the series. Sorry I don't like it as much as you guys though.